back from break. Hopefully that was refreshing. During the break, we actually discovered there are going to be 2 multi-age learning presentations today. So that should prove to be really interesting, and I'm excited to see what the group next has to offer. As we begin, what we would like to start with is actually a pre-survey on your opinions of multi-age learning. On your iPad, you should have our homepage, which should begin with Our Place in the World. It's our Weebly site. If you could pull that up, and it should be just a connection on the iPad or a spot on the iPad. Yep. And if it's not already there, you can hit home. We will be taking you briefly through our Weebly site and what is available on that as we get further into our presentation. But to access the actual survey, if you will go to Presentation and hit the first link, which is Survey. There should be a Google Doc embedded form. And if you could take just 2 minutes and complete the survey, as a group is fine, obviously.
What's your current level of understanding?
All right, so thank you for taking a moment to fill out that survey. We are actually looking to see whether or not we make an impact on your beliefs about multi-age learning and the opportunities that it provides students. As we move forward with our presentation, we'll have you take that as a post as well to see if we were effective, and we can consider next steps if we have the opportunity to discuss this work again. What I'm going to take right now is approximately 3 minutes and 10 seconds to actually have a conversation with you about our vision, an overall statement of what we're hoping to accomplish with our presentation today. Jesse and I spent a tremendous amount of time really beating ourselves back and forth with what our ultimate goal would be with this presentation and what we were hoping to have you really buy into and see as the best option to move forward as far as student achievement and teacher professional development. We began this process really looking at a tremendous amount of research to determine, our statement said multi-age learning opportunities. Did that mean we necessarily had to have a multi-age classroom? Did it mean that we simply wanted to look at ways to embed opportunities for students to mix around in various groups of ages and grade bands? And again, we hope that we have come up with something that seems feasible to you and that makes sense as we move forward of how we're going to address actually both ends of that spectrum. Multi-age learning opportunities, hopefully leading to a multi-age classroom eventually, or classrooms. Our vision behind this is actually a little bit broader than just multi-age learning, however. We believe that, as well as most of the presentations we've seen this morning, both presentations, that all of these are pathways to personalized learning. PBL, gaming, are absolutely pathways to personalized individual instruction. We believe that multi-age learning opportunities are one more pathway to personalized instruction. With that in mind, we actually wanted to create a larger umbrella of personalized learning. What we're presenting to you today is just one facet of how we are hoping to actually work, not just in isolation, but with our teammates here at Neal to move towards personalized learning. So we actually created a little catchphrase. And you'll see on our Weebly site, our place in the world. Place standing for personalized learning and collaborative experiences. So we are hoping that within that umbrella, multi-age learning finds its place to actually move students forward, student achievement forward. As we were researching, Jesse came across a great quote, and it's actually in our executive summary. It should be the first page in your yellow folder. And when we found this quote, we were like, oh, it was such validation for what we were actually struggling with. Because we do not believe that multi-age classrooms per se can be immediate. We actually believe that there has to be a very solid foundation to build capacity in teachers to do the work well. So with our quote, it's in the very first part of our executive summary. About midway down it starts, a multi-age continuous progress program is, in practical terms, an ideal. It is a goal towards which you travel bit by bit, turning theory into day-to-day success, but it involves great changes for everyone involved. It requires time, patience, courage, and commitment. When we found that quote, we really found validation that our concerns about jumping right into a multi-age classroom were validated, that we did have those concerns, and recognizing that what our goal was going to become was a professional development plan that takes us bit by bit towards the multi-age classroom. What you will see from us today and walk away with is a professional development plan that indeed embeds, professional development for teachers that is very purposeful and strategic, with a multi-age lens that works in the next year and a half to actually create multiple opportunities for students to interact across grade bands, and then at the end of that, gives the opportunity for next steps to grow into multi-age classes.
You know, with Jackie saying that personalized learning is the umbrella that we operate on, that we're going to be operating under, in Washington County and in all school districts, they collect data on students. And that's one way that we look at students and what is it that students need and what is it that we as educators can do for students so that we can maximize their learning opportunities. So what I'd like you to do is, under the presentation tab, you are going to see a sub-tab that says data source. What I'm going to do is split you up into groups and give you about 4 or 5 minutes to go through the data store. I'm going to assign you a letter of the data store. And what we are asking you to do is follow the directions that are on the top of that data store and group those students that you see there. So I'm going to ask 3 of you to do A. Maureen, if you would mind sliding down, and do B. Mike, would you mind sliding over? And I'm going to ask the panel to do C. Matt and Ryan, D. And E.
Okay. To make this slide, you actually have to pull down and then move them.
data that you're seeing. Let's see, hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Biological science, biology, psychology.
Myself, I'm gonna say green pepper, right? It sounded, it's very
It's really interesting as you are working with groups of students, the conversations that are coming about. And we feel like with multi-age learning opportunities, part of the process of conversation about students and about student learning is sometimes more important than the product that we come up with. So the conversations that you're having right now are the kinds of conversations we want to encourage our teachers to have about students. If you are still working, that's fine. We're hoping that with this next part, you'll see the purpose and intent of using this data sort. Jesse's actually going to take you into a data piece and explain to you how it relates to the work that you just did. You just have to pull it up there.
bottom, very bottom.
All right. So, what you had were student numbers. And Jackie, can you send this in for me? What you had on your sort were student numbers. We did not tell you what grade level those students were in. We just asked you to sort based on the data that you had available to you. Once this gets enlarged, you'll be able to see that this is the actual grade level breakdown. So if you looked at your student numbers, this is where those students actually are according to their chronological age and their grade level. My guess is that your sort looks different than the way these are broken down, which many of you, it looks drastically different. So what does that mean? What is that telling us? That's telling us that we have students with a broad range of needs and a broad range of interests, and by grouping them according to grade level only, we're missing out on tremendous opportunities to meet the needs of those students, both academically and socially emotionally.
Does anyone's data look identical to the grade level setup that is here? This is actually authentic data from Fountaindale Elementary. Does anyone have a data setup that looks identical? Were there any conversations that you had about the way that you were grouping students that you would like to share that you thought was important? What were some of the conversations you had about the grouping of the students that you had in front of you, knowing only the data that you were presented with?
I think we just tried to, because we were just given different strands of science in our interest inventory, we tried to just link how like environmental science really links with biology and possibly anthropology. So we put that together, and you weren't really looking at what students can do, and it's just based on what they need based on the information you're given. So
Absolutely. And those are the kinds of decisions that we have to make about students based on the information we're given. However, each of you had the same group of students, and I can promise you that none of you grouped them the exact same way. So we have to look at a wide range of data, ranging from student interests to MAPS data, MSA data, formative assessment data, conferences and conversations that we're having with students. We have to look at students, we have to look at the whole child. And then we have to make really purposeful decisions about how we are going to regroup them so that they can actually move forward and learn in the best environment possible. So the purpose behind the data sort was for you to see the wide range of ways that we need to look at students. And sometimes we put a label on kids before they even walk in the door, because we say you're a fourth grader, and you're going to be with all fourth graders, and you're never going to see anybody but fourth graders. So when we're sitting around the table, age is probably one of the least important numbers about students when we start to think about learning opportunities. So what we would like to do is actually take you through our action plan and how we plan to actually work with teachers so that they can begin starting multi-age learning opportunities, eventually leading to a multi-age classroom opportunity. Maybe you should pick up the journey.
Yep.
So our action plan is designed to actually begin in February, right off the bat. We are looking to have immediacy with this. But we will tell you that, as the quote said, it is bit by bit. It is embedded with teacher reflection. It is embedded looking at student work and student artifacts. It is embedded looking at what's working, what is not. And it also has opportunities within the process for teachers to say, you know what, I don't know that this is the best next step for professional development, so could we focus more on this? So we have teacher voice opportunity as well. Jesse's going to begin by showing you where we'll start. And the way we'll use this format is basically he'll present to you the actual action steps, tell you a little bit about it, and then I'll come in and talk about why it's important to multi-age learning. Because some of these things aren't necessarily specific to multi-age learning opportunities, they're just specific to quality professional development and student achievement. Oh, also, yes, in your yellow folder, thanks Jesse, there is a salmon-colored sheet. These are WCPS initiatives, not necessarily all, but many of the ones at the forefront currently. And what we're hoping that you can do is, as we're discussing our action plan, that you'll be able to look at the current initiatives and find how our action plan supports initiatives that are already happening within the county. You can make checks beside those, you can make notes beside those, but again, we don't want you to see this as one more thing, but rather as a way to support the work and the initiatives and vision that are already in place.
All right, so beginning to look at this, should we have the opportunity to have our idea funded and move on with this? You know, one of the things that was paramount to us was having the ability to, we've had the ability to collaborate with one another and do a tremendous amount of research and collaborate with people across our country and in other countries. I've been in touch with people as far as New Zealand and as close to home as New Jersey, looking at other schools that are using multi-age models and what are they doing and what's working. But, you know, we particularly value all of you and what you bring to us. And should we have the opportunity to move on with this, we would love to have this work become a part of what we can talk about here as a think tank. We know that there are ideas and things that we may not have thought of and things that we may need to consider as we move forward. Once, throughout that process, and once that moves on, we'd be looking at sending a comprehensive survey to all 4th and 5th grade teachers. The survey is available on the website. What that survey would do is look for readiness to implement some of these strategies. Again, the idea being that we know that some people are in better places and have had professional development that has put them in a place that they can begin to do some of this.
And we've also seen this. The research shows that when multi-age learning is not teacher-driven, that it is not teacher-owned, and it is not successful. When it becomes something that is forced upon because of budget issues, or when it becomes something that says, congratulations, you now get this big multi-age learning opportunity, it is not nearly as effective as teacher buy-in, so that's where the survey would come into play.
So then, teams being selected would be the next natural step. Then beginning to dive into the work itself and looking at what is it that we're really getting at with this multi-age opportunity concept. And moving beyond that, you know, we as lead teachers have been doing a lot of work with understanding by design, backwards mapping. What we know is that multi-age learning is not successful if it's not planned well. So the bulk of our professional development at the initial stages is learning how to unpack standards and develop high quality assessments and develop personalized instruction to meet the needs of students.
And the reason that is so crucial, as Jesse said, to the multi-age learning opportunities is because it has to be purposely planned for. It's not simply just rearranging students across grade bands and then just hoping they walk away with something. It has to really be planned in a vertical manner so that it's efficient and it's effective, that its end goal meets the outcome that's currently been established. So we plan to do that through a UVD seminar to really set the ground foundation of backwards mapping, beginning with an end in mind. What are strong summative assessments and what are strong formative assessments, so that we're constantly monitoring student achievement throughout the process.
And once that process begins moving on, actually asking the participants once they've been selected to create a unit and bring that for feedback so that all of the people that we're working with through this can have the opportunity to provide feedback and give some direction as to what is working and what may not be working.
And again, you do have access to this timeline embedded into the website. If you click on each of these, it actually gives you more of a synopsis about what each step of the way entails. With that unit feedback and reflection, though, that's where teacher voice comes back in. It is also where we look at the work they have done in previous years compared to the multi-age learning and actually do, again, a strong comparison of student data. Is this working to move students forward?
And then with that culminating in summer work of creating scrolls and UVD units for an entire school year so that things are planned ahead of time and feedback can be given prior to implementation.
Now some of you may say, well, how is that different from the scrolls that are already being done? These scrolls would be done with a vertical mindset. So 4th and 5th grade targeted teachers, because that is where we're targeting for now. so that we can lay a foundation and then grow. 4th and 5th grade targeted teachers will be looking at creating this curriculum vertically, together, having lots of conversation about what would this look like at 4th grade level, what would this look like at the 5th grade level.
One of probably the aspects of this that teachers are going to find most challenging initially is assessment. How do we assess these kids and know whether they're meeting standards and whether they're directly meeting their needs? So we have built in some very strong professional development around assessment of for and as instruction, as well as how can we look at rubrics and checklists and use those in the most meaningful way possible in a multi-age opportunity setting, with then creating a photo album of assessment so that, again, it's the collaboration of ideas and the sharing of ideas between these teams that we'll be working on.
This work will be happening over the summer. One of the focuses for the rubrics and checklists would be creating performance levels or level performance rubrics, so that we're looking at students working from basic all the way to exceeding standards, and we can honor a vertical approach, so that when eventually our end goal of having a multi-age classroom occurs, we would have teachers having 4th and 5th grade students operating on these level performance rubrics to honor both grade levels.
We had to do that data sort in there. We know that data is going to be an essential component of putting this together and grouping kids in a meaningful way. So we have built in a series of professional development sessions that would look at how do we use different types of data in different ways, and at the same time, how can we use all of those data pieces to really give us a clear picture of what it is that our students need.
We'll also be using the DOK levels, the web depth of knowledge, to look at varying levels of performance. Starting at level 1, ranging all the way to level 4, knowing that level 4 encapsulates that ultimate independent transfer of knowledge. And when students are working in that 4th, 5th grade regrouped vertical multi-age opportunity, they'll be working through these varied levels on performance rubrics, trying to honor the idea of transfer at multiple levels. And then, of course, we have 2 more sections of reflection and feedback, and then as we go further, just because we don't have a tremendous amount of time left, how much time? We have 2 minutes, all right. This is where we will actually dive into opportunities for student interest. We would pull in our experts on PBL, we would pull in our experts on gaming, we would look for opportunities, things like currently are happening at Fountaindale. I know Eric is Skyping with, I think, Johns Hopkins or something next week with STEM, or maybe not, I'm not sure how that works out. It fell through, okay. But we're looking at, so he's not doing that, so if you erase that from the presentation. But we are looking at, for example, we're doing some work with Krellen Elementary, and working on Skyping and looking at multi-age opportunities beyond those 4 walls as well. So we would be spending time looking at student interest, project-based learning, those types of things to really garner, again, another way to regroup and look at student achievement.
With multiple feedback sessions and collaboration sessions built in for these teachers, with the end goal being at the end of this 1.5-year process, we have built a capacity that, should they choose, we could move into a full multi-age classroom.
And we would have, of course, this inter-project review and then talk about those next steps. However, we are planning the entire way along this process to be documenting the professional development, the look at student work, teacher actual instruction on our iTunes U, which we have started not as in-depth as our PBL group, but we do have that iTunes U piece. And we're planning to document each step of that so that it could possibly be replicated in other schools at other grade levels. Again, our goal is a professional development plan that lays the foundation for the necessary work of the multi-age classroom. So in looking at that and knowing that we don't have a tremendous amount of time, Jesse's going to take you just briefly through what the options are on our website, maybe just kind of a 15 to 30 second overview of that.
I can talk really fast. All right, so home lays out, again, our vision, facts about multi-age learning opportunities, different types of multi-age learning opportunities, and benefits, both from the student and the teacher perspective. Again, you've seen those for a presentation and our blog and iTunes view there being our documentation along the way of how others could replicate this in the future.
So with that in mind, and knowing that we're closing out, and again, the blog is as a matter of reflection. Students could be participating, parents, teachers, the iTunes will be documenting the process along the way. We hope that you will consider this. This is not necessarily flashy, and the intention was not to be flashy, and we know that. We're not making headlines in the newspaper on this. But we are hoping that it is the foundation for sustainable growth that could then eventually incorporate all of the ideas that are being brought to the table today as the process moves towards personalization of learning.
Excellent job. Alice?
So clarifying timeline, you're thinking professional development with perhaps, depending on how that goes, and I understand that you're being very responsive, multi-grade classrooms 4 and 5, perhaps 2015-16. Is that?
The multi-age classroom itself?
Yes.
Yes.
2015-16.
Yes.
So you're gonna use the survey, I'm going back,
Mhm.
and that's gonna be part of your basis for how you determine who's your first group?
It would almost serve as an invite or a conversation. We bounced around the idea of an application, we bounced around the idea of a couple of different things. We wanted to get a gauge on where our teachers were, where our administrators were, where our learning communities were. So the survey, you have access to that. It's under the action plan. So there is a survey that we have that we've started of what we would put, and Jesse was working on that very diligently. The idea is we would look at that data and then start having some conversations. Is this something that you would be interested in? We didn't want to put out an application that said, hey, sign up for a multi-age classroom opportunity, because we were worried that that would become very, very overwhelming. So we approached it in a more subtle way, that we can then open up conversations with administration, principals, those folks, and looking at that. And our budget also is very detailed, and we do have a copy of that for that kind of professional development as well. That's where all of our money is at, just in professional development.
And
Is the number in this budget in professional development a per teacher? How many teachers?
We are looking right now at a total of 6 teachers. That does have some flexibility. We might say 5,000 to 10,000. We're like, oh, this is easy. But
So this cost is a 6-teacher cost?
yes.
Okay, that's what I was saying.
And would you open that up to different schools, focus it in one school?
It would,
What would that look like?
we would like to have 3 different schools.
Okay.
Our-
And then like teams of teachers from each one of those schools?
yes, a 4th and 5th grade teacher from each
From like 3 different schools is the idea?
Yes.
Two starts.
And then, so part of the timeline is to select, so, because if you get, the demand is much higher than just 2 teachers from 3 different schools, how would you select the team? What criteria would you use?
We actually spoke last night about looking at the survey that we've created and doing some ranking. We used the Charlotte Danielson tool to look at goal setting. And so we have teachers that have specific goal setting needs within personalized learning, within actually looking at students taking ownership of learning. We would actually rank those a little bit higher so that we were meeting the needs of teachers and the goals that they've set in front of them. And this would be one way that they could move towards proficient and distinguished. So we would look at scoring and having almost a scale to make those decisions. But I think some of those decisions are also going to we're going to make through conversation. Once we say this is what you're signing on for, if there's that hesitation or somebody says, I'm not really sure that this is where we want to head, then we would look at those other options, because we want the buy-in. We need the buy-in for this to be successful.
And that's what I want to add to that and really underscore is that every bit of research and every principal, every teacher that I've talked to that is in a multi-age setting has overwhelmingly said if the teachers don't believe in it, it's never going to work. So our inventory is looking at who may be the most ready to take this on, who may we need to have those conversations with, so that we can determine.
And we want our teachers to know when they're signing on, they're not necessarily signing on for the full-blown multi-age classroom. They're signing on to participate in multi-age learning opportunities. And that's embedded in our professional development. Let's look at math data. How would you rearrange your kids? Now let's go try it, come back, reflect on it, look. Now let's look at regrouping for interest. Let's regroup looking at power hour. Let's regroup looking at other data. So they're going to be doing that for the next year and a half with the ultimate goal that they will find so much value and students are growing so much academically that they are absolutely ready to move forward into the multi-age classroom itself. And then this could be replicated and grown because of the iTunes U and documenting the work along the way, and looking at other funding and that type of thing to move forward.
Have you thought about how you could incorporate special ed teachers into this kind of a model? I mean, I don't know what your special ed structure is in this county, but.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, when we look at multi-age, it's learning for all.
Right.
It is not exclusion in any way, shape, or form. So the idea is that and that's what we think actually benefits, and those students who benefit so much, because we're not just looking at them as a number or a data on a standardized test. We're looking at interests, we're looking at the multiple strengths. Those twice exceptional students who bring a wide range of gifts to the classroom so that they would be in with a wide variety of different peers learning through the content, through the Common Core state standards, through the formative and summative assessments. So we see our special ed as not a separate part of this, but as.
But I'm also thinking that when you do this training, have that teacher sit at the table, so you have a resource.
Oh, absolutely, because as they're going to be our experts on scaffolding and actually moving students. You know, we have the same goal, but how are we going to get this student versus this student there? Absolutely.
One more? So clearly you've looked around at models outside of Washington County. Have you had conversations with assessment and other people within Washington County that have you had the conversations with people yet about fertile ground for this should it become the norm? Should it become a possibility?
So are you asking me whether or not we've had conversations as to whether this work would work or where we know this work could work?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. We have on here the multi-age learning opportunities. These are things that are currently beginning and happening in Washington County. They are things that okay. So math academies, vertical reading, interest clubs, Exeter mastery grouping. And we try to put examples up that range all the way from interest to math data to formative assessment. We have currently at our school, we actually have 4th and 5th grade teachers who are unpacking rubrics grades 3 through 6 to look at basic to exceeding standards and regrouping students. So we try to find a range. Also the Genius Hour, which is, you know, a very strong initiative with the PBL, the gaming, those kinds of things. So it would embed all of that. But yes, we have had those conversations about planting the seed of interest.